Greetings, everyone. My name is Dr. Jay Singh, and I'm the founder of Publication Academy, your online training partner for higher ed career advancement and professional development. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today for this installment of our Career Pathway series, Exiting Academia. Today, we have a fascinating interview with Dr. Anjali Jodeshwar, who successfully transitioned from completing a PhD in imaging science into the exciting industry vertical of telecommunications. So let's get right into it. Over now to our amazing Publication Academy interviewer, Dr. Gertrude Nantra.
Hi everyone, Dr. Jean Nantra here, and I'm super excited to have Dr. Anjali with me today. Welcome, Dr. Anjali.
Thank you for having me here today.
Absolutely. So let's start with your educational background and what led you to choose a career outside of academia.
Let's get let's get right to it. So, as a school student, I had quite the affinity for getting addicted to using the computers.
Uh-huh.
It was new back then when I was in school, in our area at least. And one of my teachers suggested my mom that, oh, look into like computer side of degree for her. She has like good aptitude, things like that. And then fast forward a couple years, I got my bachelor's in computer engineering. And then while I was going through all of that, I had a very specific niche and likeness and passion for modifying photos. Like I would edit photos a lot, and then first it was just like doing some editing Paint, and then came Photoshop, and then came Illustrator. There was
Right.
also Corel Draw, things like these. So I would always do them, and I also like volunteered on those bases. Like back in my undergrad, like I would help people make posters online at all of those things. And then fast forward my final year of engineering, we learned image processing, which means I could code all of the things that I was already changing in Photoshop,
Oh, wow.
essentially giving me the power to make new Photoshop because that's how fascinated I was. I was like, oh my God, this is so much easier.
Mm-hmm.
And that led me to applying for masters in image processing. But at the time, there was no such program as image processing, but there was a master's in imaging science, which was at Rochester Institute of Technology in New York. And that's how I flew in for my master's. And I had this knack for learning. I think that is the key to where I am today. uh, always wanting to pick up skills, always wanting to learn new things, gain new knowledge. And then when I got here at the end of my orientation, I called up my mom and I was like, I can't leave without a PhD. There is so much to learn. And that's how I got my PhD in imaging science as well. I got a master's in imaging science as well. And we learned a lot about not just changing the photo, but also what information you can get from a photo. And then my research was tangential to uh, behavior modeling, but also creating software based tools to help you model behavior. And then I applied for internships that had similar roles that would like use similar skills. The key here is your skill matters more than like the application of it. If you have the knowledge on how to make image from color to black and white, you can do that anywhere. You can apply black and white to a portrait, you can apply black and white to a sky image, you can also apply black and white to like any other image. So it's
Right.
the concept that matters more than the application. And then I got my internship, and fast forward, before I graduated, I reached out to my internship locations and I was like, hey, you guys hiring? One of them was hiring, and that's how I got my job. And I
Wow.
continue to be in the same space where we get photos, images, and we modify, and I make algorithms to modify them and make them better.
Right. Wow, that's a fascinating story as to how you got to where you are because I think so many of us played with paint. I remember my father's old Windows 95, right? And it had paint, and all I knew how to do was draw stick figures with it. But you actually turned it into a career. That's fascinating. That
Thank
is
you. reality remains I can still only draw stick figures. I cannot actually paint, or I cannot actually like draw things. I don't have that side of me, and that's probably why I liked paint, or I liked Photoshop so much, is because I could undo it.
Mm,
And I
mm,
was like, huh, let me draw the circle again, let me draw the circle again, let me draw the
right.
circle again. And it eventually turned from drawing the circle to coding the circle.
To coding the circle. So interesting. So, Anjali, let's talk about what you do now, because, or actually, what made you, before we get there, what made you choose a career outside of academia?
That's a good question. One of them, one quite honestly, was finances. People outside of academia for the same or similar tasks get earn way more, and I had been a student for a good chunk of my life. Like as of right now, it's only been 1 year that I have graduated. So I have been in school almost all of my life. And I was like, maybe it's time to not be a student anymore, or live on like
Be
student
another
life,
trainee. Be a trainee again, right?
training again. So that was one of the reasons. But also, secondary reason was being a PhD, you get a good idea on how academia would function. Or if you had to stay in academia, you would be guiding students, you would like have your own laboratory, you would do like your own research. It comes with a lot of perks, but it also comes with a lot of responsibility of guiding students, guiding them through their master's or PhD, or like even senior year projects.
Right.
And I didn't feel at the time like I was not at the space to give information. I had just finished getting information. Or like I was just going to finish the phase of life where I'm only like learning, learning, learning. And to be in that space of teaching someone, teaching a class, guiding students, advising students through their like degree in their life, it was a bigger step that I didn't feel prepared for at the time. I still don't feel prepared because it's only been like a year I have left academia. But maybe after a handful of decades, when I feel enlightened and knowledgeable, I'll probably go back to academia then and be like, okay, I am now a wise person here to advise you.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Great reason for wanting to move out. So, what do you do now?
I work for one of the Fortune 500s, and I basically do the same thing. We get photos, images, and I code algorithms. I also code AI now because AI is like the new thing that's coming up. So one of the key skills factors, or like the keywords in computer science that I use, are like AI, machine learning, computer vision algorithms to make photos better.
To make photos better. So, in a
Yes.
typical day, in a tip, I'm sorry.
That's
Um, what does a typical day look like for you?
Good question. So, a typical day for me is like going into the office, attending what we call Scrum or a stand up. It's like a 15 to 20-minute meeting where everybody gets like a minute or two to describe what progress they made the previous day and what they plan to do that day.
Yeah.
And then I go back to my desk, I sit and code, or I'll like, if I was stuck on a problem, I will Google it up, try to see if somebody solved it. If nobody solved it, I will go find somebody in the office who's done this. Or if I don't have any issues, I'll just like sit and code, and that's my like entire day.
Let's talk step by step how you found this job.
Good question. So this job was actually my department at the time used to do open seminars. Open seminar was when people were invited from academia and industry to come in and give a talk on what they work on. And it
Right.
was a way for students to understand how our skills translate to outside of our degrees. And COVID hit, so all of those in person seminars got canceled.
Okay.
However, that allowed for us to have wider variety and wider network of people come in for those talks, because now they were all virtual. So nobody had to travel. Nobody's like flight time was getting wasted, travel days were getting used up, things like that. Nobody had to take a PTO to fly out to my college. And that's how a lot of bigger company folks that were not alums from my department came in for talks, and one of the talks where they was from the head of my team at that time. And they came and they said, hey, we're going to hire like summer interns. It's going to be virtual because it's COVID. And if you guys want to apply, here is the link. You can do so. I did apply and I never got in. I did apply. I didn't get in. My friends did. And I kept in touch with this person through LinkedIn. I would literally message them every once in 2 weeks asking, hey, are you hiring for fall? Are you hiring interns for fall? Do you have a fall intern program? And they would say, like, they would always respond, but we're not hiring yet, but I'll let you know when we do. We're not hiring yet. And I am not joking. Like, I can show you my chat. It just says, like, are you hiring now? No, not yet. Are you hiring now? No, not yet. And then one fine day, they were like, hey, we're now hiring. Give me your resume. Send it to so-and-so email. We'll, like, set up a phone interview, things like that. And then that's how I got it. Like, persistently bothering that person, hoping they will not block me on LinkedIn. And they didn't. And that's how and then I went through the interview rounds. They went smooth. They were good. I delivered on what I had promised because I knew I could do what they were asking for, and I was also interested in what they were doing.
Yeah.
And that's how I got the internship. They liked my work at the internship. They proposed that I either continue the internship or convert to full time, but I was not close to finishing my degree. I was, in fact, only 60 to 70% done with my PhD. I still had like a good 40% chunk to go. So I requested them, like, hey, can we connect on this again after, like, when I'm like closer to finishing? And they were like, yeah, sure, go focus on your degree. And there was no touch with them after that, up until I was at a phase when I'm like, okay, you know what, I now want to like secure a job, get an offer letter, graduate, get all of like my international things, visa in place. Let's get this ball rolling. And fortunately enough, when I asked them, like, hey, do you have a job for me? They didn't. But they said, like, hey, we'll hire you. You were a good hire. By the time you join, we will have a vacancy because it's going to take like a few months
Yeah.
with the whole procedure and everything. So, yes, we'll send you the offer letter. And that's how it went.
I love the proactiveness you showed in this story, right? Because the first step was the person came to give a seminar. You got in, they had the summer internships, you didn't get it. And I think that's where a lot of people would have stopped, right? Even me, like I'd be like, I didn't get that summer. Because I remember being in college and applying for a summer internship. I didn't get it. And I never applied again because I was like, what's the point? But I love that the persistence, and it's such a lesson to everybody watching this that sometimes you just have to persist a little bit. And sometimes people are kind of uncomfortable with persisting and just going back to ask, hey, is there a job? Is there a job? And I would say if you do that every single day, maybe that will be annoying. But if you do it every few months, I don't think that that's terrible. And it keeps you top of mind, right? And in this case, it looks like you struck a good chord with the person. And so the person's like, yeah, sure. And then I love also the fact that when you went, clearly you demonstrated good employee habits and just being a good worker, right? Good work ethic. And even though you had to leave after the internship, you reached out again and they said, we don't have a job, but we may have something for you in a few months. I love that. I love
Thank you. Thank you. I used to volunteer as a student leader back when I was in the university, and that is the one thing we kept advising all of the students is to stay persistent, keep trying. Keep trying for jobs, keep trying for interviews, keep trying to find that advisor to fund your project. Keep finding, because like PhD students need advisors, and sometimes that doesn't work out. They need funding, sometimes that doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Things like that. And the key was always consistently trying.
Consistently trying. Thank you. Thank you for that. Being consistent. So then, how many rounds of interview for the job you got finally?
Just three.
Just three. Okay.
And
And
even just three, because during my internship, I had a phone interview with the management at the time, and the management was tech management. So it means they have entire understanding and like the detail of the pipeline that each and every employee does in the team. So when I phone interviewed with them, usually those interviews are like half hour ish, and they ask you like 10 or 20 questions. I am not joking when I say this. My interview had 100 questions.
Really?
Yes, and it lasted for 45 minutes. And it went like this. What did you use
And
for
you,
your
so they were
PhD?
asking you the questions and you were asking, wow.
And they were not like short questions. They were all like research questions at the time. So it was like, what do you use this? What should you have this? How did you tackle it this? And it was constantly like I am not joking. It was 100 questions in a span of 45 minutes, which got like a little stretched at the time. And then that was it. And they were so impressed because I never had to pause and think. The questions were more regarding my project and like what I had done for them to gauge what I was bringing to the table. So it's
Yeah.
easier to answer than like a standard, hey, can you code this? Versus like, what have you done? Let me understand what you've done and where I can like make space for you if I have any. So that was one strategy that helped me portray what I could bring to the table.
Right.
And then when the interview was done, they were so impressed that during the internship, so this was pre internship, they were so impressed with the interview, they canceled all of the following rounds for me.
Oh, that's so good. That is so, so good. Now, Angeli, one of my questions for you is you were a PhD student doing an internship. First of all, how did your PI understand that? Because not every PI is cool with that. Did your PI understand and how did you balance that?
Very good question. So, my PI was very supportive of getting industry understanding before graduating. So, like, you know where you're going in the
Exactly.
future or where you have to go. So, he was very supportive of that. But there was definitely one thing we always had established in the laboratory is you want something, you gotta not like earn it, but sort of prove it. You gotta prove what value it adds. So, if you don't want to do research for 3 months and you want to go some work somewhere else, you can make a draft that says like, hey, I'm going to go here and this is the value it's going to add to me and this is what I'm going to learn from it. And then for students that do not have such open-minded advisors, I recommend looping that into how you can leverage that skill for the project you're already doing.
Right.
So then
Right.
it shows not only that, because then that 3 month internship becomes an equivalent of doing a course
Right.
because you're
Right.
going to learn from it and then put it in your PhD. So leveraging it that and proposing on and emphasizing on the value that the internship will add, and do not mention finances in that. I don't recommend.
Okay, thank you. That's very, very helpful because I think that sometimes that's the challenge is finding getting PIs to agree. But I like how you said find a way to justify how it's going to help your research, right? And if you can do that, then it's going to go smoother than you hope. Let's talk about transferable skills, right? This is one thing that sometimes I realize a lot of academics sort of struggle with knowing. Sometimes it's straightforward, sometimes it's not as straightforward. What skills do you think were instrumental into you landing the job and are helpful for you every day in your job?
I can't emphasize on how important this question is. And the answer I am to give you comes from my mentor. Because for me, when I was an intern, I was like, hey, I can code this, I can code in this language. And like the skills that I thought were the key factors were actually not the key factors. And somebody told me that after my internship ended. They said, as a they said that the key skill was being able to be independent in research. And that is one thing all PhDs learn, all PhDs know, because every PhD is one human army at the end of the day. And they know this, but we never emphasize it. And that is the most valuable skill in the industry. Like
Being
being
independent.
independent, being able to drive things on your own, doing the research, like getting your hands dirty essentially to get something done. And these are like the skills that all of us develop at some point, but we never emphasize it. And I was literally told that I was being brought back, and I was suggested to come back, like even within the team where people told other management that, hey, we want to bring her back. It was for this reason. It was not that I could demo, I could code correctly. It was that I could demo, I can work without, or I can work with minimal guidance.
So it's sort of like the what I'm getting from that is that we're looking for somebody who with a little bit of, because first of all, from the 100 questions that were like the rapid fire questions to somebody who can hit the ground, literally hit the ground running and be independent and not need a lot of hand holding. So I think that this is for somebody that enjoys that, because yes, I agree that a lot of doctoral students, PhD students end up working independently, but like you said, it's not something that's really emphasized. And then there are some people who sometimes they need a little bit of guidance before they can take off running. But if you are somebody that enjoys the thrill of like go, then I think that that's a really, what do you think?
That is definitely, but it also ties into understanding what you need to get the ground running. Because for me, I did need a few things which I didn't know when I started.
Right.
So, like, end of second day, they had like the orientation got done, onboarding got done. They tell you like, hey, this is what we want, and it's a bigger goal. It's not like a small detail thing. It's a very tiny thing. So for you to build up that details, if you can sit down, brainstorm with yourself and figure out all of the pieces that you need to get the ground running, and you pitch to them like, hey, this is all that I need from you, they are more than happy to guide you. Because also in the industry, it's very much acceptable to take like first 2-3 weeks to like get used to the things, get used to the task. But that initiation on, here is what I need to get the ground running, should come from you, and they can see that. It may take
Right.
them 3 weeks to provide what you wanted, that is completely fine. But that in that ownership comes from you, that hey, for me to do this is what I need. And it also comes from that having that, how do I say, confidence to ask questions. It's okay if you don't know how to do something. It's completely fine if you don't know how to do something, because that is not expected. But it is expected that when somebody is explaining what is to be done, you grasp it as much as you can
As much as
correctly.
you can. Yeah. I loved what the word you used in there somewhere, ownership, right? Taking ownership of your project. Do you still have some ties back to academia? Do you do any work in academia?
Yes, more than ties, I do have, like, I do email my advisors in the past, my committee members. Sometimes I hit up the students that were in the lab that have still not graduated because they were very early when I was leaving. So sometimes I hit them up. I ask them like, "What are you guys up to? Do you guys want to do something? Just grab like a virtual lunch at some day, just to
Yeah.
keep in that." Also, because for me, by the time I graduated, I was senior student in the lab, and a lot of new students would look up to you by then because you know the concept. So it's a cycle. Like when you're young, you look at someone that's been in the lab for a while, and then eventually you become that person.
Yeah.
So they would look up to me, and it felt like a sense of home. It felt like a sense of being. So I wanted to give that back and continue with that. So I do keep in touch with the students. I keep in touch with the advisors. I also keep in touch with some other faculty members that were in the department that may or may not have been like directly connected to my work at the time. Just because they're human beings and they've been a part of my life for like good 7 years straight.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's great. Do you think you'll ever go back to working in academia?
Maybe, but not immediately.
Yeah.
Definitely after a few decades, my hunger is full, my stomach is full, my pocket is full.
Your pocket is full. Yes, absolutely. That those are good. Those are good goals. So, as we land the plane, this has been such a great conversation. As we come to the end of it, what last piece of advice would you give to somebody who is currently a PhD student, maybe in imaging science, maybe not, but somebody who wants to do something like you're doing, what advice would you give them?
This is the one thing that drove me. There were a lot of things we did, a lot of ups and downs we faced. The one thing that's constant in PhD and as a student especially is society defined failure. Okay, and society defined failure for a very simple term could be I plan to code this and the code breaks or it has bugs or you don't manage to finish the code in like 8 hours of you coding. It's like how we perceive failure or how we perceive success. The key to getting through successfully with your brain in your head through PhD is redefining success on your effort. My success today is I will put in 3, 4, whatever hours of focus on coding this. If it works, it's fine. If it doesn't work, that's also fine. If it breaks, that is also fine because I can fix it tomorrow. But my success would be that I did, in fact, without getting distracted, without getting tensed, without like losing focus, put like 3 or 4 or whatever hours that I have decided into this task today. And that is my success. And once you start defining success on your own effort, you gain confidence, you gain a better understanding of what you can as a human being actually do in 8 hours. Because sometimes tasks look simple, but they're not. They're
Yes.
not. And so that is like one crucial piece of redefining success. There's also another part which is acknowledgement for the chance of failure. This is one thing that I learned from my advisor, which is, and on a very, very, very base example, it's like you may want to cook food. You may want to cook rice. Rice is like very simple. You've cooked it 10,000 times and you don't burn it because you know how much ratio to use. There's a chance. There's a chance it might get burned. There's a chance you may get a phone call and you might forget about it.
Forget about it. Yeah.
There's a chance for failure. You're not acknowledging that you will fail. What you're
Right.
acknowledging is the existence or like the chance of that failure occurring. And the best part about this acknowledgement is it takes off the stress if you fail. It is not expecting failure. That's a difference.
Yeah.
It's not expecting failure, but it is that I have, for the simplest example myself, made images from color to black and white 10,000 times easy in my career. The chance of failure is tomorrow when I sit to do it on my Windows laptop, there's a chance that the laptop updated overnight, some libraries changed, and the same function doesn't work.
Right.
And that in no way means I can't do my job. That is not a reflection of I can't do it.
Right.
But there is an acknowledgement that things can fail, and if they do, we'll fix it.
You fix it. Thank you. Thank you. Everything, I heard somebody say, you can figure everything out. So thank you very, very much for this, Dr. Anjali. It's been such a great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
Absolutely.